imagine, if you will, a teenage girl with all the moods and melancholies, tempers, the rivalries that are a part of that sort of delicate age. She suffered a terrible trauma, nothing less than the destruction of her entire civilization. And then imagine that she has within her the power of a goddess. It's pretty terrifying, I'm sure you'd agree. Yet we aren't terrified of Kara Zor-El, of Supergirl. And that is one of the central issues that arise in this book. So this is Batman Superman number 2, written by Jeff Loeb, art by Michael Turner, and colours by Peter Steigerwald. And this is from back in 2003, I think. I really like this book, so I wanted to talk about it today because there's a new Superman movie coming, and I'm very excited about that. I really like Superman. Here he is. And I've always liked Superman from a child. I went to see the original Superman movie back in 1978 with Christopher Reeve. I didn't go with Christopher Reeve. I went to see the movie that Christopher Reeve was in. And we all know how fantastic he was in the part. He was absolutely iconic. And I love those movies. And so when the Supergirl movie came around in 1984, I was front and centre to partake of that movie. I know it's a movie that doesn't have a particularly good reputation, but I love it. I think it's great. And I particularly love it because of Helen Slater. I thought she was absolutely perfect. As perfect for Kara as Christopher Reeve was for Kal-El. It's a movie with a great cast. I mean, the dialogue's pretty terrible, but the cast do their best with what they're given. Peter O'Toole is just, well, he was always fantastic in everything. And it's such a shame that he's given, almost as if the writers sort of collected all the most terrible lines in the script and then said, we'll give them all to the one character. He gets the worst dialogue, and to his credit, he manages to pull something out of the fire. It's usually he's brilliant in everything that he did, but his eloquence, his charm, he manages to pull it off, even though he's walking around wearing a strange jumper that looks like he borrowed it from Mike Starsky from Starsky and Hutch, but that's another issue. So he was great. And then the other Peter Cook, he's surprisingly malevolent in that movie. He gives a very sort of dark performance, which is odd given, his credentials as a comedy actor and the fact that, he was an incredibly witty, charming man. But he's very dark in that, playing Nigel, the school teacher of the college that Kara ends up in. And also, as it happens, a warlock. And he's allied with the two sort of villains of the piece, which is Faye Dunaway's character, Selena, and Brenda Vaccara's character, Bianca, who are just brilliant together. It's really good. I always get the impression with Selena that she wasn't really evil, that she was sort of had this incredible power sort of land in her lap, and it's the old thing that Stan Lee wrote, isn't it? With great power comes great responsibility. Well, what if you're completely irresponsible? I think the power that she got, sort of led her down the path that she ended up following and became. It's interesting because obviously it's paralleled with Kara, who has an innate power. She's not given the power; it's just part of who she is, and she obviously goes completely the other way. So I do like that movie. I think it's got a great cast, and Helen Slater, as I say, in my opinion, was perfect. Very excited for the new Superman movie, and I hear there's a new Supergirl movie coming as well, so I'm really excited for that. So yeah, I like Supergirl. I enjoyed the movie. I also enjoyed the show. I've got it here, which I've only seen the first 3 seasons of this. I kind of gave up on it after that. I'm not sure why, but I did enjoy this. I thought it was really good. Yeah, and I thought the actress was great in that as well. But this, I think, is my favourite piece of Supergirl sort of stuff that I've got and that I've read. And this is really great. I came to this comic, as I say, this came out in, I think, 2003, maybe 2004. And Kara had been out of the comics for a long time at that point. She was killed off, as we all know, in the big event of the mid-80s, the Crisis on Infinite Earths. And I've got that over here somewhere in my visual chronicle of DC Comics, which is I'm going to hit the camera if I do it like that. There we go. Yeah, she was killed off. Very memorable image. I've got it bookmarked here, I think. Yeah, I'm not sure how visible this is going to be. I'll do a zoom in. But yeah, the Crisis on Infinite Earths, Superman holding Kara dead, killed with the battle with the Anti-Monitor. I do love this book. It's way too big for my little camera here, but it's absolutely brilliant. But the thing is, I just sort of get lost in it. There's so much great stuff that it covers. And yeah, it's really good. I haven't read, I must say I'm not a comic book expert. I know there's a lot of comic book experts on YouTube. I'm not one of them. I'm not some comic book panjandrum. I am certainly not an authority. It's a beautiful piece here by our friend EVS. Green Lantern, Rebirth. Not sure how. I'll probably try and do a close-up of that for the camera. So yeah, so she'd been out of the comics since the mid-80s, and I don't know whether they killed her off because that movie failed or whether they just wanted to tidy up the continuity. I've never quite really understood what that was all about. Spock. But she was coming back. They wanted to bring her back, and this was the book they decided to do it in. This was a flagship book back in the day. Some really amazing, legendary people in comic books worked on this book over the years. I think this was a continuation of an older title. It was kind of a respin on it. But this is Batman Superman. It's the sort of joint title. And this was came out in floppies, and then this is the collection. And I like did get the floppies. I've got them over there somewhere. But I enjoyed this book so much. I got the hardcover, as you can see, when it came out, which is what we've got here. It's got a very I love the art. I think the art's fantastic. It's got a very interesting, here's Batman's introduction. Batman looking suitably epic underwater on his bat glider, underwater bat glider. I don't know what you would call that. Someone will be able to let me know. And here he finds Kara's, I hope you can see with the glare coming through the window here, he finds Kara's crashed spaceship, and she's underwater in the bay of, Metropolis Harbour. It's interesting that they chose again, they did this in the Supergirl movie from 1984, to have her come out of the water, which we'll see on the next page. Which they did in the movie. She did. If you've seen the movie, which I'm sure everyone, it's a 45-year-old movie. I'm sure everyone's seen it. She comes out of the water. I just hit the microphone. She comes out of the water. She doesn't come from outer space. And there's a line of dialogue that explains that they're in some sort of pocket dimension, which I think ties in with the earlier comic books. I haven't read any of the earlier comic books. As I say, I'm not a comic book expert, but my understanding is that she there was a colony city, Argo City, I think, and she her father sort of did something to protect that city and sort of either moved it to another dimension or moved it to some other sort of plane or some such, and so it was spared, kind of like an ark, which is interesting. We'll come back to that point. But yeah, here's Batman coming out of the water, looking absolutely incredible. One of the reasons I really wanted to get this book when it came out was that I really liked Michael Turner's art, and I came to it in a rather strange way because I was a big fan of Lara Croft in the video games. And so when she moved into comics, I think the company that got her was Top Cow, and one of their other main characters was Witchblade, which I think was Michael Turner's character. And so they put them together in a kind of a team-up book, kind of like this one, I guess, which was like a Witchblade Tomb Raider sort of crossover thing. And of course, Michael Turner did a lot of the art on that book, and I really fell in love with the way he depicted characters. He kind of depicts characters the way I imagine them when I'm writing. Here's the reveal of at least the face of Kara. We have seen her in other panels, but we always see her either from a distance or from the back. And so here's her sort of face reveal, I suppose, in YouTube parlance, and she just looks absolutely fantastic. Yeah, so I really liked Michael Turner's art on that comic, and so when it was, announced that he was doing this, I was right in there. I have got the floppies over there, but I thought we'd go for this one. And here's Batman in all his glory. Michael Turner really does women and men fantastically. Sort of idealised both. The men sort of idealised in terms of, the musculature and the masculine appearance. And women sort of here's Superman's reveal. Again, very masculine, very heroic. Square jaw. A guy that you'd trust. And, he's also able to draw women incredibly feminine and very beautiful, very pretty, but also strong and perfectly sort of lines up with what you would expect from a superheroine. That, she's sort of attractive, but also physically strong and formidable. And we'll see later on when he depicts Wonder Woman that I'm a huge fan of Wonder Woman as well. When he depicts Wonder Woman in this book, not his Crypto. I'm really pleased they've got Crypto in the new movie from what I've seen. I think he's going to be an absolute star in that movie. I'm so excited for that film. I may go see it and do a review for the channel here. Not that I'm a movie reviewer, not that I'm a reviewer at all, but I'm tempted to because I really love these characters. And I'm not going to show all of this book because, I don't want to impinge on people's copyrighted works, but or too much at least. Hopefully this is fair use. But again, Michael Turner's art, absolutely beautiful. I'll do a close-up on this in case I'm not sure how this will come out on the camera here. But the question that arises, which I started with, is why aren't we afraid of Kara? Because that's the premise of the book. I mean, this book, as I said, it's got a very interesting technique, narrative technique that I think you could only do in a comic book. And it's this idea of having two narrators that are talking at the same time. And obviously this is Batman Superman, so one of the narrators is Clark and the other one is Bruce, and their speech bubbles colour-coded. So you've got all of this information going on at the same time. You've got two narrators, action which is depicted in the page, in the art, but then you've also got the dialogue as well. It's absolutely incredible. I think it's the sort of narrative technique that could only work in a comic book. I've tried to think about how you would do this in prose fiction, of having two narrators and also dialogue all happening at the same time. And the problem you would have is if you were constantly switching perspectives from one character to the next, back and forth, the way this does, it would get very, very confusing for a reader very, very quickly. The only way I can think that you could do that, and I mean I do this in some of my books, because I have two main characters in rather like here, is to sort of have two scenes, have the same scene play out twice, and then have the first run through be from one character's perspective, and then the second from the second character's perspective. But what you have to do in that case, I think, because obviously the problem is it's going to get repetitive, is have the first run through pose questions that are then answered in the second run through of the scene, and so that the reader gets sort of mystery that's then paid off in the second run through. I don't know how, I'm not a filmmaker, so I don't know how you would do it in movies, but I can't think of any movies offhand that have got this dual narrative technique, where you've got two narrators, both talking to the audience at the same time. It's a very unique thing for comic books, I think. The central sort of premise of the story is that, again, coming back to the two perspectives, Batman does not trust what's happened here. He does not trust that Kara Zor-El is who she says she is. And the problem we have as a reader is, unless this was the very first comic book you ever read, I think this was probably the very first comic book my daughter ever read, but even she knew that Kara Zor-El was Supergirl and was the real deal. We all knew. And so we kind of know the fact that Batman is suspicious and doesn't trust her. You can see where he's coming from, because a civilization is destroyed and you've got two survivors and they both end up on Earth. The coincidence is kind of incredible, and he doesn't trust it. Obviously, being a little bit more sort of wary, cautious, suspicious. He's Batman after all, the great strategist, the great detective. He's always looking for the mystery. He's always looking for some new angle. Whereas Clark, obviously as the last survivor, other than Krypto, who we've seen later in the book, wants Kara to be the real deal, and he immediately trusts that she is. I'm seeing if I can get to the reveal of Wonder Woman, which I think is a great page. There we go. I'm not going to tell you what's happening in the story, but Wonder Woman takes over and takes charge of Kara. And again, because Batman's suspicious, there's fear, they don't know. She has incredible power, the same sort of power that Superman possesses. And so, she becomes a pawn in some way between these characters, sort of vying for who gets control of what she does. And not to get too spoilery, but obviously she herself, Kara herself, asserts that, hey, you can't do this to me. I can decide for myself what I want to do with my life. And all of these characters, the Trinity here, fantastic cover by Michael Turner. The Trinity here, each of them have to come to terms with that she is her own person and she's going to do her own thing. And, Clark's instinct is to trust. Batman's instinct is to distrust. Wonder Woman wants to keep peace and make everything work out for everyone, which is perfect, And here's Kara and Artemis sparring. Fantastic double-page spread. So, it is a problem that Jeff Loeb, the writer, has to deal with in this book, is that we kind of know that Batman is in the wrong, that the suspicions that Batman's got about Kara are wrong, and that they're unfounded, and that she is the real deal. And that's a difficult thing. It's not a problem that the writer created himself. It's a problem that, he inherited. Obviously, this character at this point had been around for, 40 odd years, maybe 50 years at that point. And unless she was going to be some kind of weird, bait and switch, some sort of decoy, not the real deal, kind of like they did in the 90s, where they brought Supergirl back and she was some weird ectoplasmic creature that was a shapeshifter and was besotted with Lex Luthor. I hated that storyline. But we kind of knew that wasn't the deal, that she was the real McCoy. And I'm showing more and more of this book. I just love it so much. And everyone in the DC universe turns up in this book at some point or other, even if it's just a panel. Artemis, we've got Doomsday. Well, spoilers, I'm not going to tell you who that is, but obviously it's Doomsday who killed Superman in the Death of Superman storyline. Here's another fantastic double-page spread. What's not to love about comics? Absolutely fantastic. So yeah, the problem that the writer's got is that we know that Batman's suspicions aren't correct, and he does his best to try and sort of mitigate that. Like her first encounter with men, I hate this scene. It's such a trope, and they did it in the movie as well, and it's worse in the movie. Where her first encounter with men, and what do? They try to, grab her or creep on her or, and I just don't think that's realistic. I think if you saw a young lady, obviously gone through a traumatic experience, walking towards you, 999 men out of 1,000 would want to know what's happened and try to, be comforting and reassuring and see if, authorities need to be called. They would. The chances of the first person she meets, the first man she meets, being a creep is not high, but it happens in the movie and it happens here as well. And it's not quite as egregious here as it is in the movie. It's really bad in the movie. She arrives on Earth and runs into two truckers who immediately want to do terrible things to her. And of course, it's a very unrealistic thing. That you've got to imagine those truckers live in a world where Superman is a real person. And they've seen other Kryptonians like General Zod, and if we assume that the other movies all took place in the same timeline, which we suspect they did because Christopher Reeve, or the picture of Christopher Reeve, appears in that movie, and Jimmy Olsen appears as well. So those truckers would have known, hang on, super beings exist. Maybe we don't want to mess with. And the minute she pushes the first one through the fence, you would think, let's get out of here. But it goes on. And the same thing happens here. The first guy sort of reaches out to sort of grab her or do something. It's not quite clear here. But she breaks his fingers, which is entirely justified if he's trying to grab her. But then the next guy gets a bill hook. It goes full, I know what you did last summer. And he gets pushed into the crates here. And she then takes the bill. It's all written in Kryptonian, which is really fun, because there is a page at the back where you can translate the Kryptonian and work out what she's saying. It's something that kids really love doing. I know I had fun going through all this and working out what she was saying. Now, I think this could have been done, the writer could have done this a little bit better if these guys were being comforting and were trying to find out what happened, and approached her with the obvious intent to help her. And then she broke his fingers because, she's confused, she's traumatized, she doesn't know where she is. She doesn't know her own strength. This is her first interaction with another person on Earth, and, she's not going to know that she has superpower. So yeah, that would, if they did that, these guys were only trying to help her, and then she sort of, did this. It would sort of lead into better, I think, into Batman's suspicions, and maybe ours as well, that, why did she do that? I mean, it's kind of understandable why she did that, but I think it would be better if the men weren't trying to be complete creeps. But that's a minor gripe. I do like the story. I think it's very good. I've always thought that the DC characters are more sort of mythological. I do like some of the Marvel stuff, but I don't read the Marvel stuff. I mean, there are obvious mythological connotations with some of the characters. I mean, Wonder Woman literally is a Greek mythological hero. It's a wonderful Brian Bolland picture of Diana here. So I mean, I've always, even a character like Superman, I've always thought of as a mythological character. And I think it's because of, obviously there's the iconography. They wear capes, they've got a heraldic coat of arms on their chest, Supergirl and Superman. They're kind of like knights. Obviously we've got the Dark Knight here as well. So, you get this sort of modern day interpretation of, knights in armour. Brought home here with, you've got Batman here with swords, you've got Diana with her shield and spear, Superman just looking incredible there. This is Jim Lee art, and this is, I think, one of the best pictures of Kara Zor-El. It's Michael Turner again. Fantastic cover. Really good. So I've always thought of these characters as mythological. And if you think about the mythology of the story, it's very mythological in sort of its character. Superman, many people draw the parallel of, between the story of Superman's origin, Kara's origin as well, and Moses. The fact that he was put on, in the book of Moses, we remember in the scripture, he's put in an ark of rushes and sent down the Nile to escape, the genocide of the slaves' firstborn children. And in the Superman story, it's not a river, it's outer space, and it's not an ark of rushes, it's a spaceship, but it is the same metaphor. And it is a mythological metaphor as well, because it turns up in other places. There's a similar story in the sort of the historical character of Sargon of Akkad, in his sort of semi-mythical sort of origin story. There's a story of very similar to the Moses story of the character being sent. He was a real person, but you understand what I'm saying, that he was sent down the river, I think Euphrates in that case, in an ark of rushes. And then if you sort of imagine that the story of Moses is sort of a recapitulation in miniature of the story of Noah's Ark, and how life was preserved in an ark, not an ark of rushes, but a great ark, and all of life was preserved in that and set on the flood. Then that goes back even further, because a version of that story appears in the Sumerian Gilgamesh, and it also, I mean, Superman, Supergirl, it is sort of probably the most prominent example of that story idea being used again in pop culture. But it does turn up in other places. I mean, it turns up in the World of Warcraft mythology with the war chief, Thrall. When his parents are slain, he also is put in a basket and sent down the river. And you see that at the end of the Warcraft movie, where, Thrall or Goel, Kal-El. Goel is sent down the river in the basket and he's found by the people that will eventually adopt him and rename him Thrall, which is obviously a word for slave. And it also appears, I think, in Star Trek, in the character of Odo. There's in Deep Space Nine, there's a part of that story where the changelings, he's a changeling, are sent out into the universe, not to escape danger, but to find danger. And he's one of 100 changelings that are sort of sent out, cast adrift, which is, an inversion of the idea, but it's the sort of clever inversion of the idea that you would expect from Star Trek back in its absolute heyday. Where's Spock gone? Here he is. I'm also a big Star Trek fan. So, yeah, I think the sort of mythological sort of underpinnings of these characters is what appeals to me. I've always preferred DC's lineup to I'm dropping everything here. I've always preferred DC's lineup to Marvel. I know, I don't dislike the Marvel characters. I like them a lot as well, but almost all of the comic books that I've got are DC comics. And I love chiefly the mythological characters. And I think that's one of the reasons that I like the Supergirl movie as much as I do, is that it's a story that exploits one of the weaknesses of Superman and Supergirl that's very rarely sort of dealt with in movies, at least, which is magic. Selena is a witch, and she uses the Omegahedron to enhance her witchcraft and sort of make it real and embody things in the world. And the problems that Kara faces in that movie are almost all stem from magic. But it's interesting if you think about the Moses connection and the Ark connection, and then you think about the choices that they made in that movie. And in this, that they have Kara coming out of the water. It's they didn't have to have a crash land in the water here. And in the movie, of course, she just comes she flies out of the water literally. And at the end of the movie, spoilers, it is a 40-odd-year-old movie. When she's got the Omegahedron, she uses the power of the Omegahedron to go back through, the binary, as it's called, and go back to Argo City. And of course, the idea of Argo City itself, a refuge, an ark, if you will. And Argo, of course, is a mythological name for a ship. So now I'm not saying that there's a direct through line with all of these ideas. What I'm suggesting is that ideas get reused and writers draw on ideas again and again in different ways and bring these things, maybe not even consciously. It goes back to what I was saying in the other video that I did about Frankenstein, that we don't really know where our inspirations come from. And I know that Siegel and Schuster, the creators of Superman, never really sort of connected the character and his origin story to, Moses or to, the sort of the Hebrew story. But I think it is there, and it is a parallel that you can draw. But I'm not saying that there's a direct through line and that this directly inspired that. It's an archetype. It's an archetypal story that gets drawn on again and again. So yeah, this is Batman, Superman, number 2. From, I think, 2003, and it is absolutely superb. The art is terrific. I'm not an art guy. Talking of binary, I'm very binary when it comes to art. I either like it or I don't like it. I can't tell you why I like it, other than in very broad brush strokes, if you excuse the pun. But I know when I see something that I like, I know that I like it, and I like this art. I really do. What was I looking for? I was looking for when it was published. Let's see. Oh, 2005. Oh no, 2004. So 2004 would have been when the floppies came out, and then 2005 would have been this. So I was a little bit early, but yeah. And Michael Turner's art, absolutely superb. Such a loss. He died very, very young. And wow, what an incredible, incredible talent. Just superb. Yeah. So I thoroughly enjoyed this book. I love Supergirl. I love Batman. I love Superman. But I really, really, really love Supergirl, and I am looking forward to next year's Supergirl movie a lot. I hope it's going to be great. And yeah. So that's my video. Thank you for being here. Thank you for watching. And you have a great day. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.